think
part of the US are you in?
I'm going to try to turn this so you can kind of see my face because, like, I have a lot of backlight, so does this work better?
What part of the US are you in?
I'm close to Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Okay.
Philadelphia is kind of like a little bit south of New York City.
Yeah.
So it's about an hour and a half, 2-hour drive to get there. But we have a lot of water around here, so we have a couple rivers, and then there's like the Atlantic Ocean is. I have to go through New Jersey, but the Atlantic Ocean is over on that side, very close too. Yeah.
So Jen, you are a vegan professional triathlete. Is that right?
Right.
And you run a website called Veg Racing, or do you pronounce it Veg Racing?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a play on words. So I say like V-Edge, or some people say Veg Racing. It doesn't really matter. I've had that website for like 2 years about. I've been vegan over 10 years. And I just started kind of racing as a pro. But I have been racing triathlon for like this is my 10th year. Okay. Season ending this year is my 10th year doing triathlon. So, it's been quite a journey because I'm also a little bit older for, to be racing as a professional. And I can go a little bit more into that as far as like why I decided to race as a pro versus like an amateur.
I'd say there's some journey to get to that level. I can imagine. Like I could see straight away from your website. First of all, it looks great. It's really laid out, and I've seen the first thing you realise is the fit, fast, and powered by plants for the animals. The slogan as you open it up. One of the first things that jumped out to me as you see you on the professional road bike, and as a kind of cyclist enthusiast, I would say I could just see the caliber of bike even it was. I'm sure it looks great, but also expensive. But,
the whole idea is to go as fast as you can. So I've invested in some nicer bikes, and so now like when I race, even some of the top amateurs have really good equipment. It's a sport that's unfortunately like it's kind of geared towards people that have like a little bit more income and they can spend money on bikes and so that bike though, the one that I race for the triathlons is it's a time trial bike, and I've had that bike, that one in particular, since 2012, so it's gotten a lot of use.
That's the one with the TT bars. This is the
yes. Yeah, it has TT bars on it. And that's so I do non-drafting triathlon, which is it's kind of a subset of triathlon that's a little bit different than what you see in the Olympics.
Right.
So in the Olympics, there's like it's called drafting racing, where when they're on their bikes, they can actually strategize and ride together in groups.
Yes.
And, so all the races I do are individual, and there's set rules about no drafting. So it makes it kind of different in terms of what kind of training I do. As opposed to people who do drafting races, like draft legal races. But that's pretty much what I've done since I started the sport. So I kind of stick to that. And
no, you can see it's a lovely looking bike. But first, I'll tell you what my podcast is a little bit about first. Anyway, it's only started this year. Training, Thought, and Truth. It's called. And I was kind of always been into the fitness element myself. Now, not on a professional level, but just in a day-to-day kind of scenario,
Sure.
So the training was kind of I had this mantra that I always wanted to be physically fit, mentally sharp, and kind of spiritually well as well, And the three I thought were kind of interweaved between each other, If you look after your mental health, or if you look after your physical health, your mental health gets better, and I think it's a good basis for a complete kind of person to work on them three aspects, I thought, And then we came across, that's how we actually came across each other, because it's only going since May, and I've had going into the online kind of presence, that you do come across, which is all recent things, you get a lot of different you know, different fitness routines, different sport specific stuff, different kind of nutritionists saying different things, and you know, I wanted to figure out, you know, what's the right way to go and how to put people on a good path, you know, and being as honest as possible. Kind of was saying, like, I'm not coming from a standpoint of any particular, you know, I don't have anything behind where I'm coming from. I'm just giving you what, you know, I think these are the guys who have tried it, and I wanted to get people on who can, you know, who are good in each aspect, you know.
Right.
I noticed well, first of all, can you run me through your background, how you initially came to be involved as a triathlete?
Sure. So, I actually wasn't an athlete growing up. How can I put it? I actually didn't consider myself an athlete at all growing up. I was at a school, like a regular public school, where there was a lot of sports teams and kids doing team sports, but I didn't really feel like I fit in there. And one thing I was really drawn to was I really loved horses and animals. So when I was growing up, I used to take horseback riding lessons, and I kept going to this one farm where there was a lot of, you know, there was kids who were riding and going to like horse shows and stuff. And so I kind of did that for a long time, which was really, I guess it was very formative for me in terms of how I feel about animals and how I kind of feel about them now, because I spent so much time around animals doing that. And after like 9 years of doing horseback riding and some of the shows, like I do into some horse shows. So like horse shows here are different. You know, they have like the Western and they have English. So I went to like English horseback riding shows. It was hard because I feel like I kind of got my competitive nature going with that. Like I kind of wanted to do more competitions, but at the same time, you need like a lot of money to compete in that sport. It's, you know, the horse and like the trainer and the clothing and
the lessons.
Getting your horse to like the actual location where you're going to compete it's all very expensive.
Yeah.
And I felt like the competition itself was somewhat biased towards kids that had, you know, more of a wealthy families that were supporting them. So then when I went to college or university, I decided I was going to just not ride anymore, and I was going to try a team sport. And so one of the big things that they have here in Philadelphia is they have a lot of rowing competitions on this one river that goes through the city. And I went to a couple of those just kind of on a whim, and I thought, hey, it would be really great to try rowing. And so when I went to school, university, they had rowing tryouts, and I put everything I could into it, and luckily I made that team, even though I had no original background in rowing, or I wasn't in really that good a shape either. I just tried really hard, and some of the things they had us do were like go in these long runs, and like I couldn't even run very long or far. You know, I just kept trying.
Yeah.
And it was really painful. Like I think that's why at some levels I can kind of relate to people who are just starting out in a sport, especially like endurance sports, is because your body isn't used to or trained to do those things. But I remember how I felt like when I started doing that. So, I feel like, I can kind of like understand people who are even though I competed at a high level now, like I still remember that side of me. So, so when I was a rower, I was doing a lot of like indoor rowing on these like rowing machines, and they would have us do long training runs just for like conditioning. And rowing's a tough sport in general. Like if you want to do the sport, you really have to want to do it.
It's really power based, isn't it? It's really
yeah. It's a very, and it's like your whole body too. It's your legs, your back, your arms, and I think I was probably a little bit better at that just because I'm tall. Like taller people have like a little bit of advantage in a boat because you have like longer levers and things. Yeah. So I really worked really hard at that. I wanted to be good at it. I wanted to be competitive at it. I think that was just a motivating thing for me, is just to see how far I could go as a rower. And So I did pretty well, in terms of my strength and stamina on the team, as I just kept training and doing the workouts as best I could. And I got to go to a couple of pretty cool competitions when I was a collegiate athlete. And then one of the things that I kind of noticed as I was doing my rowing training was I started really enjoying going out and doing these longer runs. They'd have us go and run for 45 or 50 minutes, and I kind of started really enjoying that. And so when I graduated from college, I took a job in a place I had never been, and I didn't know anybody, so I decided I was going to train to run a marathon. And it was something I thought I would never be able to do ever in my entire life. I had an uncle that ran a marathon, and I had a couple friends that did it, but then I never thought that would be possible for me. I just thought that's so long of a distance. How could I ever do that? But then once you start on a training plan and just consistently chip away at what you need to do to prepare for an Iron or for a marathon, you start noticing wow, I could run 10 miles or whatever. So then I ran a marathon, and that was I think that was 1999, and it was one of the best feelings ever. Yeah, I mean, I didn't do super well or anything. I just remember the feeling I got when I came to the finish line. It was a pretty cool feeling. So then I was like, hey, I want to do that again. I want to train a little bit better or harder, and maybe see if I can shave some time off.
Yeah.
So that kind of started my running. I wouldn't say career, but I started on a path of doing more just running, and I did some cycling, not anything structured or nothing where I was I would just ride my bike around just to get places.
Yeah.
And so I kind of put a little more effort into my training with marathon, and I wanted to see if I could qualify for the Boston Marathon, which is kind of a big thing if you're a runner to qualify and do the Boston Marathon. And so it took me a couple years to do that, but I finally qualified for the Boston Marathon, and I ran that. And it was just mostly just consistent training and sticking with the plan. And I don't remember feeling at one point hey, I'm really good at marathon, or that I was actually a real runner, but it was a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
And so then I took a different job. That was probably around 2002. I kind of got into some different work, and I started going to law school, and just the new job and doing law school kind of took a lot of time away from my physical time to do sports and stuff.
Yeah.
So so I kind of I took some time off between I would say 2005 to 2007 from really doing a lot of real running. I mean, it was kind of here and there. But then when I was working as a lawyer, after I graduated from law school, I really felt I was lacking in, I wasn't healthy because I was working so much.
Yeah.
I was spending so much time just sitting in front of a computer, 12 hours a day.
And that can drain you as well, can't it? At the end of the day, you don't want to do anything else. I
know, yeah. So it was a really hard time, and this is kind of where you were talking about the spiritual side or the the mental side of what you're doing. I think that to me I feel there has to be a balance.
Yeah.
Between what you do mentally versus what you do physically, and so I just said, this is not good for me to be sitting and doing this job for 12 hours a day. So I changed that completely, and I went back into something that I was doing before. So I have an engineering degree, and so I went back into the engineering field. Okay. And at that time, I could put more time back into what I was doing with sport. And so I had been reading back in maybe 2002 about Ironman, and I had just heard about it then, and I didn't really.
Because many listeners might know what that actually means.
Yeah, so Ironman it's a really long triathlon. So Ironman is a swim, a bike, and a run. And it's all sequential, and it takes place on the same day, but it's really long. So like the swim is 2.4 miles, and I don't know what that is in kms. I think it's 3.8 kms.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, probably even more, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. And the bike ride is 112 miles. It's a really long bike ride.
Wow.
And then it's a marathon at the end of all of that. So it's an endurance event, and I heard about this on TV. I absolutely could not believe that people were doing this.
Yeah,
like when I first saw it on TV. Yeah, so I first saw it on TV, and then I saw it in like maybe a magazine or a book or something, and I couldn't believe that people actually did this. This is like something I just was blown away about, how anybody could run a marathon after doing all that. And I didn't grow up a swimmer, so to imagine swimming, and it's an open water swim too. You don't swim in a pool, like you swim in a lake or an ocean or a river or something, and
real conditions.
Yeah, it could be extreme. You could be bad conditions. You could have currents, things like that. So I couldn't believe the people actually did this, and so at the time when I first heard about it, I thought, that's, I don't know. I was blown away by it. But then in 2008. I had just more time to devote to athletic interests, and so I kind of thought back to when I had heard about Ironman, and I thought, well, gosh, it would be really cool to train and race for that. And I had met somebody just in passing who had done that race, one of them, and I was like, you know what? If that person can do it, I can do it. And so I got this book about how to train for this event, and I started reading more about it, and I kind of realized I needed a whole year to train for it, because just the preparation and getting your body in the physical condition it needs to be to do the race is really important. And even though I rode my bike different places, and I grew up going to the beach and swimming in the water, you have to, really condition yourself for a long swim, and then to be on a bike, and then to run. So I got this training book, and I got a book that had an actual training plan in it, and I took a year. I went to a race. The other thing is race selection, because they have different Ironman races throughout the country, and now actually in the world now, and I decided I was going to do this race in Florida, and I went to the race a year ahead of time, and I signed up for it, and volunteered at the event just to kind of see what it was like. And so then I knew I was going to do this race the next year, and so that's when I did the first one, which was 2010. And I remember training for this race. I had no idea if I was going to be able to do all three things together.
Yeah.
On the actual race day, but you as long as you're kind of working towards the goal, and you're consistent with your workouts, then you really, you're setting yourself up for success. And so,
it sounds it sounds like you trained a lot by yourself.
I did, yeah.
That's tough, because it sounds like, even though you said you weren't that athletic in school, but you had a drive almost. Where do you think that came from? Was that handed down from parents, or was that?
No, actually, because I don't know. I've kind of wondered about this too. Why am I more competitive than other people? Maybe. And I wasn't really athletic when I was younger either. So I'm kind of wondering where this came from. But then I'm thinking when I was in school, I also had a pretty significant drive to just be the best that I could be, no matter what it is. If I'm studying something, or if I'm putting my physical nature to the test, I feel like I should just try to be the best that I can be in any one moment. Yeah. And so I'm not sure exactly where it came from.
Yeah. It's very tough it's very tough to train by yourself, you know, I think, you know, especially if you're going for such a high goal, like a triathlon, you know, like I'd love to be able to compete in them, and I said that hopefully next year I might, you know, if I stay working at it. But I'm lucky enough that there's a few people who keep me motivated, a few friends who are saying, you know, I do a hill run with a friend of mine every Saturday, and he makes sure I do a few runs that week and strength sessions, and he doesn't let me say, you know, not that I make much excuses, but he's like, make sure you're here at this time, and you know, he won't let it go, which is good, you know, because we have, you know, hill runs coming up. But it sounds, I can't imagine how tough that is, because hill running is one thing, it's sport specific, but it's only a one sport.
Yeah.
Where you're talking about 3 sports training by yourself, I say that like it's much harder.
Yeah, but at the same time, like I think with triathlon too, because it's 3 sports, you're kind of constantly changing things, and your mind is changing at the same time to like kind of fit into what it is. So it's always something a little bit different every day.
Yeah.
Whether like, I mean, as a professional, some professionals do a lot of the same things every day.
Yeah.
Just because they're devoting all their time to it. But like if you're doing this like kind of on like a more amateur level, like you might do a swim and a run one day, and then like next day's a bike day with maybe some strength or something, and then the next day's like a swim with, you know, a bike. I mean, it's very different. And that's why I think like, so after the first year that I did Ironman training in my race, I hired a coach. So since my first race, I've had a coach. Okay. And they kind of lay out my training plan, and so I kind of don't really have to think about what I'm going to be doing, and I can be accountable to another person at the same time, which is really helpful for me, because if I had to come up with my own training plan or use a book or something, then I'm accountable only to myself, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. And if you have, I think it would work too if you had like a lot of people to train with. So I have some friends that overlap into like what I'm doing. So I have some friends who are runners. I have some friends who are cyclists.
Yeah.
I have friends that are swimmers, right? Okay. And if you can kind of combine some things, then you can really get a lot out of like using some friendships, even if they're not doing like an Ironman. Maybe they're a swimmer and they like to go and swim in the morning. And if you can, you know, go and do a few sessions with them, then that kind of gives you a little bit of a boost. And I do think like generally like doing things with other people is way better than doing them by yourself.
Absolutely.
But then, you know, there's some things like for me, if you're competing at a higher level, there's some things you kind of have to do on your own, like just because the race is individual. And so you want to be able to, like, when you're, you know, struggling or having like, you know, something go wrong during your race, you want to be able to rely on yourself to get you motivated and keep going, or solve whatever problem comes up. So in training, I think it's great, you know, but you want to also have your workouts reflect your abilities too. So like if you have, you know, training partners that you ride or run with, you want to kind of make sure that they're at your same level, and they're going to push you to like get better, or give you moral support. You know, you want to kind of pick and choose. For me, at least, like I found like I pick and choose like kind of like who I can train with and get motivated from, or feel like I was pushed from, or sometimes it's just to have like, you know, moral support.
Yeah, no, it is true, because like I always thought, you know, up until this year I wasn't doing much running. I had been doing cycling for the last couple of years. I was doing a lot of weights, and that had always been part of it. And I always liked working out with a friend of mine who got me into weightlifting like 10 years ago. His name was Jimmy, and he could always lift that bit more. He was like his big farming kind of family, and they always. Yeah. But I knew if he was lifting that, then I better lift at least 5 or 10 kilos less than him. You know, I better, you know, show up. Right. Same, this guy who runs with me, he's in the army. He's a personal trainer through the army, and he's that much. He's a good bit better than me, but he's better in terms of he'd still go out with me, and we do our own pace, but we're doing loops, and he eggs me on, and he has his own website, and he puts it up, and you know, he goes out and gives me tips. And same with the cycling, the guy in work, when I kind of realised he was into cycling, I kind of got the bike out a bit more. I went out a few times with him, and we entered a few races, small enough ones, you know, 60k, 80k, nothing major, you know. But but he was always that bit ahead of me, which was driving me on to catch up almost, which I like, because you'll hold yourself up otherwise in a way,
Mm-hmm.
But I get what you mean by that. It is good. But which of the three would you say you found the most difficult to break into, or did you find any of them? Like, I know running can be tough.
Yeah, so the hardest was the swimming by far.
Wow.
Yeah, because what I found with triathlon is a lot of the people who are doing the sport are also kind of new to the sport, and maybe they've been runners or cyclists, but most of them haven't been swimmers. Okay. And the thing is about swimming is it's so technique oriented, like where your head is and where your body is and where your arms and legs are doing. It's much more almost like a skill, like something that you really need to, like, instead of like being like in some ways like fitter, it's more or less like having a good feel of the water, and your technique is really key to how comfortable you're going to be like in open water. And so I've always been really comfortable in water. Like I was never a pool swimmer, but I knew I could like save myself if I fell in like deep water or something, and I'm okay being in the ocean and things like that. But I never had like the conditioning to swim really long distances, and I didn't grow up like on a swim team, which is a lot of kids around here, that's like a sport they do when they're younger. So I didn't do that, and so for me, like, just I guess getting the confidence and the training in to be able to swim that distance was really crucial. And what I did was I knew that was like something that I was very weak at. So I joined this, what we call like a master swim team, where it's like a swim team but for older people. And so you're doing like pool workouts, and again, like the whole aspect of being with a group, and kind of everybody kind of like pushes each other to do better, or gives people moral support. Like that was like really, really key for me to get proficient at swimming. And it didn't take very long before I could swim like pretty long distances. But like at first, like the initial few times I did that was very challenging. Like, you get in the pool, and like to swim like up and back in one lap is really hard, because you just your body hasn't done it. So and even now to this day, like the swimming part of it is, like, for me as a professional, like one of the more challenging parts of like the race, because a lot of the people who are super competitive have been swimmers in the past, and maybe they've started cycling and running. And so like that's always something I'm trying to like get better at. But the thing is like with swimming is like the more if you stick with it, like you can really make a lot of improvements.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a neat process too. Like it's you might find that you can't even swim one length of the pool when you first start, but then if you just keep trying, eventually you can do like a lot of different distances. So
it makes sense what you're saying, actually, Gary. I never thought of it that way. That it is a very streamlined technique, isn't it, for the swimming, especially for speed? Because running is, I know, like starting off running, there's basics that everyone picks up, but most people can just get out and jog just without anyone showing them,
Right.
Or you can get on a bike and pedal, like we all know how to do that. But swimming, it is technique, isn't it? And it's what way. Everything, the way you do everything with it, how you hold your breath, how you get under the water, which way you throw your arms over.
Yep.
And it makes sense that you'd say it is the most difficult to get, especially in the competitive mode, to get good at fast. So that does
like to swim well, and like to like be efficient when you're in the water too. Like you don't want to be like holding yourself back more. You want to be very like efficient when you're swimming, so you don't have to use as much energy. And it's truly amazing. Like I've been swimming for like at least 10, like trying to be competitive, and for 10 years, like trying to get myself faster. And I'm still not even close to like some of what the top swimmers are swimming. It's like it is neat to see like over time like your progression. Like you just it's one of those things where you just kind of keep you have to keep at it, and you have to constantly think about like, what can I improve here? Like every time you get in the pool, you know, like maybe like, hey, I'm going to really work on my, like one thing in triathlon that's really important is to be able to breathe like both sides.
Yes. Yeah.
The water. So like, you know, when you're swimming, you want to be able to breathe one side and then the other at certain times. And so I've worked on that a lot, and like that isn't even a problem anymore. So like I can do that. And yeah, I mean, there's just things over time that you can focus on, and then like it's really important, at least for me, to have somebody like look at you like while you're swimming, because you could be swimming and think like, oh, I look great, but then somebody else who's like a swim coach would say, hey, you know, your arm is going way too low, you know, or your legs are dragging or something, you know, like. That's
the thing. You can't see yourself doing these things, you know, and it's always good to have that other side point. One thing I did think was quite good on your website. Mm-hmm. I was reading a few of your blogs you put up, and I thought it was good that you could talk about. You put up some of the setbacks you kind of had as well, and I know like setbacks. You know, when you come to like likes of Instagram, you follow fitness enthusiasts or athletes, and you see the Instagram photo of them finishing the race. You know, or the professional photo of them, you know, standing tall or doing the last kilometer. But it can, I think it can be disheartening. Hidden behind that is all the sacrifice and the struggle of getting there, and all the races that didn't go your way, or you know, all the setbacks with injuries. And I thought it was nice, you know, to put it out there as well, because I think people can relate to that. You know, I like to talk to people who are literally going from the couch to trying to do something, you know.
Sure. The
first thing I know, like even starting to jog, you know, your calf muscles are, you know, I really related to, you know, being on the bike, and you know, when you're saying about your glutes tiring early or your day. And can you talk about some of them setbacks you did come across that were probably, you know, tough at the time, but it was, you know, you overcame them?
Right. Yeah. So I think it's interesting, and I'm not sure whether it's like, you know, I'm getting older now, so like I'm 43 and I've been doing this for 10 years, and like the first few years that I did this is actually went pretty smoothly. You know, I didn't really have too many problems, but last year I had some different issues that came up during my races, and I you know, it's just baffling sometimes. You train so hard and you think that you're ready, and then sometimes during the race something happens, and it's just like, well, what am I going to do about this, you know? So I think some of the biggest things that I've had, I'm actually pretty like, I mean, it's good that I haven't had too many injuries. I've had some bike accidents, you know, like a couple of crashes that have, you know, not been great, because I broke my collarbone one year, and luckily it was kind of minor, so it, you know, like it's now fully functional again. But some people deal with, like, you know, different things that happen when they're, you know, just from an injury standpoint. But for me, like, it's always been kind of I haven't had too many like real bad injuries. It's just like things that happened to me, like in 2014 I was doing this race, and I was doing really well. I had like a good swim, and I was riding the bike, and I got to like almost the end of this really long bike ride, you know, because the bike ride's pretty long, and all of a sudden my stomach just started hurting really bad, and I had no idea why it was doing that, you know, like whether it was something that I ate, because when you're racing for that long, you have to like replace calories, you have to take in nutrition, and I didn't know whether I had something that disagreed with my stomach, like, and it was like, I just felt like I knew, like, at one point I was like 4 miles from the finish of the bike ride to start running, and I knew, like, at some point, like, I was going to either have to get off that bike and like try to like stretch out my stomach or something, but like, but I was like, no, I'm going to keep, you know, I'm just going to get done. I'm just going to get back to, and so I made it to the end of the bike ride, but I knew like something was wrong with my stomach, and I started the run part of the race, and it was just so much pain, and I could feel like my heart was beating like faster than it should, because when you're racing, you kind of like keep tabs on like your physical like things that are happening to your body. And so I thought maybe like I was having like something was wrong with my heart or something. So I stopped, and like I kind of like decided I was going to see what happened if I just stopped and like rest for a little while. Even though I knew like my race, if I stopped, like I wasn't going to be competitive, and like so it kind of didn't go away very quickly. And I think what I learned from that was I think that like my diaphragm, which is like underneath your lungs, if it gets stressed out, it can actually cramp. And what I was having was like a diaphragm cramp.
No way, really?
Yeah, and I've had that in one other race, and I'm not sure what causes it. Like I still don't really know, but like the thing is like, you know, you like for me it's like, well, if one race was really bad, like that can't, you know, that doesn't derail my goals, like, you know. So you know, the next race I kind of made sure to like either maybe like space out what I was eating more evenly and not like, you know, eat a whole bunch all at once and like cause my stomach to do something strange.
I imagine that's frustrating, especially like when you said it was your stomach and you couldn't tell what the exact cause was, and you know, when you're reaching for the goal as well. Like, but it is like I read a few of your stories of the burrito and things like that, you know. So
So I mean, things. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, one of the races I went to this year, I went down to like southern part of the U.S. for this race. It was a pretty big race to start my season, and I was driving this rental car, and I ran over this guy that was in the road, and I couldn't drive the car, and you know, there's a lot of things that happen that could really, especially in sport, because you know, things that can happen during a race, you know, and like you've put a lot of time and effort into something, and the thing is though is like there's always a next day, right? So you can look at it two ways, you know. It's like either I'm just gonna give up, like, hey, this race went terrible, and like, what am I gonna do? I'm just gonna give up. Like, there's one way to think about it, and then there's another way to think about it. Well, like, hey, what did I learn from this? And then what am I gonna do differently next time? And like, there's always gonna be a next time.
Yeah.
If you want to, you know. So that's the way I've kind of thought about it, and I always think like it's in some races like I could always do better, right? Like there's always something that doesn't go perfectly. There's no race that's like perfect. There's always something that you can learn so you can try to do better the next time.
Tweak it or something, yeah.
Yeah, and that goes for like, you know, running a marathon to doing like a century ride or, you know, a long swim or something. Yeah, I think what most people don't realize is like if you give up, then you never know what your potential is, you know, like, yeah.
It is true, because I was going to, like, combining with what you said about going back to the law firm and the setbacks as well. Like, I had a bit of a setback this year. I was training for what would have been a kind of, like, I'm relatively new to cycling even the last couple of years, and it's just when I could get out. There's a race called the Ring of Kerry in Ireland, and
okay.
It's I think it's 180 kilometers, but it's the hills of Kerry, so it can be tough enough, you know. So I was aiming for that this year. This July it was starting, and no one would do it with me because they're all busy that weekend. So I said, look, I'm going to do it myself anyway. So I was cycling up by myself, doing it. The week before the Ring of Kerry, I got into my head, I was cycling everywhere now, and I was cycling to my auntie's 40th, which is in another county, and it was only 80 kilometers away. I was going to go there, drink non-alcoholic beer, get up the next day, cycle back. I went and I picked up a bag of clothes I had left in my workplace a kilometre away from where I was stopping, and the bag caught and spoke, and I went head over heel. And
oh no!
My bike. I remember I went over the bike hit, and I knew something was wrong. And what happened was I shattered my collarbone, and I was in for surgery the next day, getting it plated up, and I had to really kind of sit at home then, and I guess all my strength went, my fitness went. I had to watch these people taking off on the start line on Facebook, you know, and I was kind of, you know, sitting there, but really what I was doing, I was just getting out and walking, just concentrating on moving, and I was trying to flip it in terms of like I can start from scratch now and build a good base and start running and start getting the diet right. And I put a lot of work on the podcast while I was sitting at home as well. Get it up on all the forums and get an online presence with it. And that's not that long ago. That happened the 30th of June, so 1st of July surgery. So it's not that long. But since then, I have been doing things a lot the right way, and I've been talking to the right guys on it. But even like you say, I have figured out a few things that are more important than, like you said, work can take it out of you a good bit. And so I sit at an office desk. What I was doing was going to the gym every day and making sure on my lunch break and all. And but now I'm kind of in a way where I'm running a lot more. I'm kind of doing a few different sports. So the hill run, the cycling, the weights, trying to get in the swim as well, all minor scale. But I think that's why it's so nice to see, people like yourself who are professional athletes have the setbacks up there, because for people like me at home, who are trying to do their 10Ks or their 15Ks, and have them setbacks, you can see where even the professionals have it. It's not all the glory either, on whatever stage it's on. So that's why I thought, it was particularly nice seeing that on your web page as well,
Yeah.
Don't see that much.
I feel like people think that it's all just like a very linear kind of a thing, and you're just progressing however you want, and like, hey, everything's going great, and I go to these races and it's fantastic. But like last year, I had so many things happen to me that were not so great, and I still try to, even if the race itself doesn't go well, I try to think like, well, hey, this is what I learned this year, and I got to go to these fantastic places, like some of the races that they have around the US are at these really cool places where people, you can go and see different parts of the country, or experience another part, a city or something. So it's a matter of perspective, right? Like, and I think most people, they'll see Instagram or maybe what people post online and think like, oh, this person has had it all rosy and everything's gone great. But almost every top athlete has had some sort of major setback at some point, and they're really good lessons, I think, for anybody, whether you're young or older,
Yeah, and that's what I took from it as well. I took it as, it doesn't have to be, you're like, when you see your fitness level dropping and you see the weight coming back on, and it can be very easy to get stuck in the muddle and say, just stay on the couch then and say, well, I tried a while ago, and then your crutch then is saying, I got the injury, so I couldn't do it. And people don't ask too many questions then, where I think, like you said, everyone struggles through these things and they go through it, and it's all a part of the progress. I think that even though this happened this year, which could be a big setback, like I've made some huge leaps. Like I don't think I was able to run like 4 or 5 kilometers without stopping at the start of the year, and like we did a 13K hill run on Saturday, and it's no problem going out and doing a 10K now, even though it's not that much. I'd like to do a half marathon next year, and even though that happened this year, I'm still better at the end of the year, And I think it's nice to see, that being shared online as well, not so hidden.
Definitely. That's a question. Go ahead.
Regarding the progress as well, though, I know, like, when you're saying you're competing 10 years ago, the latest surge in technology and all that has brought, like, the fitness bands and the wristwatches and all that, which you mightn't have, probably didn't have 10 years ago.
Right.
I wanted to get your opinion on it. See, they've been around. I'm relatively new to the run and all that, so they've been around for me. I could have just said the last couple of years, okay, I went out and got one. I do have one, and I find it helps me. But I'd like to get a perspective of someone who didn't have it, who has experience with having it, and has it helped, or is it good for, what you think from both sides with,
I think there's good things and bad things about the technology, honestly, because from a good perspective, you can track your progress a little bit more, because, like, for example, I use a Garmin when I run, and it'll track my pace and how much it'll, and if you have like like Strava or something, or like Training Peaks. We use Training Peaks here in the U.S. a lot.
I found on Strava.
Yeah. Which is, I really like Strava. I think it's a really nice tool because you can see like, oh, I did this many miles this year. It'll track like your how much you've done, and like, you can kind of keep track from your year or even like season to season, like how much time you're putting into the sport. And I think like that side of it is really good. I also use a power meter on my bike, so I can like see like when I'm actually in better fitness, like I can put out more power on my bike. And then I also use a heart rate monitor, which is like kind of one of those things that's been around for a while.
Yeah.
But like you really kind of have to know how to use it, because I think like some people just like, they're like, oh, my heart rate's this, and they might not understand the data. So I have like with my coach, she's very in tune to like how to use those parameters to like, carve out my training and figure out like, if I'm making progress or not. But there's also, I think like from that side, it's really good.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of see your progress, but at the same time, like it can also be hard on people, because say you're just having a bad day, hey, you didn't get as much sleep one night or another, or you didn't eat well or something, and then your numbers are off the next day, and you could feel bad about that. And like I've gone through days where, I look at the numbers that I'm, when I'm training, and I'm like, oh, my legs aren't feeling it today, and I'm not hitting the same power numbers. So, you kind of get like, you kind of feel bad about it. So there's other things you can do. Like if you happen to like you have to be very self-aware. So like if you're training and like, oh, this today, I'm feeling off today, whatever it is, you can like, put some like Scotch tape or like masking tape over the part of the Garmin that's showing your readouts, and just say, hey, I'm going to try to have fun on this ride, instead of like maybe trying to like hit the same power numbers that, you normally hit. So that's kind of like one of those things where you have to be really self-aware, not to go down like a bad path and start thinking bad about yourself. If you're using the data, it can be kind of detrimental in that way. So like, yeah, when I first started, I wasn't using anything. I didn't even have a watch that would track my distance or anything. I just would, I would have like a watch to see how much time I was spending doing things, but I wasn't using like a Garmin or anything. So, and I thought, in some ways, like I had a little bit more fun doing that. Like, you just kind of like, hey, I'm going to go out for like, a 3-hour ride and, see what, you're not like, pressed for like how fast you're going, or, you're just thinking like, hey, I'm just going to, go out and ride. And so in some ways, I think that could be more fun. So like if some people are using the data too much, maybe it's time to like just put some of that aside and go out and have a fun day, where you're not using that stuff.
Yeah, obsess about it a bit, can't you? Well, like you can go down the line of obsessing about it, I guess, which isn't good, because I think they're positive for the same reason you're saying. They help track your progress. But on the other side of it, then I'm a culprit for glancing at my watch every couple of minutes when I'm doing a run. Checking my heart rate, and because I know I want to push myself to a certain point, and. So I am a culprit as well. And as well, I talked about it. I was talking to a ski athlete there on Saturday, and we were talking about, because everything's social now, like the Strava, people might not want to put up their 3K run besides the 25K run someone did earlier on that day, So I guess that is, that's one side of it as well. In overall view, I think they are good. I think that like it's good to, if you're a personal trainer and you want to get someone out and get them going, it's good to, like you said, you're a coach, check where your heart rate is or where their heart rate is and how much is a realistic goal in what point of time. But I can definitely see what you mean of just enjoying the activity as well, rather than worrying about the numbers all the time coming up. It's very true.
Right. Yeah, especially since now that I'm racing as in the professional field, like I've gotten very like self-conscious about like how much power I'm generating versus some of the other people, and how fast I'm running versus how fast they can run, and in some ways you kind of have have to be really like, you have to kind of look inward and say, well, what am I really trying to get out of this? You know, am I trying to get fitter, or am I trying to get faster, or do I just want to have fun? You know, and now that like I've tried to like step up and really compete at a very high level, like I've kind of, it's hard. I have to constantly say to myself, you know, hey, these are my numbers. This is the best that I can do right now. You know, I'm going to keep trying. But you know, in some ways you can't compare yourself to, say, like somebody who's winning like the world championship races, because it's just a different person, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and only you have your genetics and have gone through your journey. Like, you know, that's why, right. You know, even that's what I'm saying, hindsight of what happened this year, I'm still better than I was last year, and I'm gonna, you know, hopefully aim for that again next year. You know, but
right.
Actually, one thing actually, the initial reason that we got in contact was actually from because I was seeking a vegan athlete to speak.
Yeah.
And fair play to you for putting your hand up as well. But it seems to be a hot topic at the moment, and especially because of this. I think it's probably initially is this Game Changers documentary came up recently. I don't know if you've seen that on a Netflix, and I think it sparked a lot of. Every time I go onto YouTube now, there's something about it, you know. And Joe Rogan's talking about it, and then there's all these influencers getting online and giving opposing viewpoints on it, and some people love it, some people don't like it.
Right.
And I wanted to get I put it up a few weeks ago. A friend of mine actually said to me that he's doing his Meatless Mondays, and I was, what's that? And he goes, you know, see the Game Changers or something like that. So I did look at it about a month ago. I watched it and I was kind of blown away by it. And what I said was that because I had the platform kind of, you know, and I said that I've been doing intermittent fasting because like that I'd seen it and wanted to try it and wanted to post my results, and I got great results out of that. And I'm still doing that. And then I said that I put up that I want to do a plant-based diet, and I'll post my results in a while. I'm still doing it. I'm sure 3 weeks into it. And I wanted to get a vegan athlete because I find I'm going for runs and I'm not sure what to be eating to fuel up. It's like you wouldn't think it's such a big change, but it is really, you know. And I'm not sure what to be buying, what to eat, pre-workouts and things like that. Maybe you can run through how you became a vegan.
Yeah.
How you feel as an athlete.
So I grew up not vegan or vegetarian or anything, and it's really funny too because I had a couple of friends when I was younger who were vegetarian, but I thought, oh, like I could never do that. Like that was the initial thought in my head, like I could never do that, right?
Yeah.
And you know, when you're younger, you're kind of a slave to whatever your parents are giving you, or people who are, you know, in your family or whatever. And so when I graduated from college, I decided, like I had this roommate that I was living with who was vegan, and I'd never even met like a vegan person before. And I said, wow, that's really crazy. Like I don't, like, how do you do that? You know? And then she kind of taught me, this is how you cook and this is what you eat. And I wasn't really thinking about it from an athletic perspective. I just thought about it from an ethics standpoint. And I've always been an animal person. Like I've always loved animals. Like for me originally, it was definitely an ethical thing with animals. Like I really had to come to like a really hard conclusion that if I loved animals, like I really shouldn't be eating them, because what it is essentially is you're paying somebody to, like, you know, keep an animal in a cage just so it can be killed for food. And I just couldn't deal with that. I couldn't, like, that was just something I could not spend money on, like, anymore, is keeping animals in cages. And, you know, and now, like, the way modern farming has gone like so much down like the wrong path, and they're, you know, at the animals' expense, basically keeping them in smaller and smaller cages. Like their quality of life is pretty bad, at least, you know, in the US. You know, we get a lot of, like, I'm very aware of how a lot of the farm animals are raised, and it's just become so bad. And even, like, you know, 10 years ago when I was looking into this, actually when I was just looking into becoming a vegetarian, that was like 20 years ago, and there weren't many substitutes either. But at the time, like, I just knew that that's something that I should do from like an ethical standpoint. And it didn't really matter to me, like, you know, I was a lot younger. I was in my 20s, and like, you know, when you're in your 20s, you don't really think not much about nutrition.
Yeah.
But I just said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And my roommate showed me how to cook tofu and some other things. And like, I'm like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Right. And so I was at that point, like, I gave up meat in like a day. And, you know, it was kind of hard because I think the people who are closest to me, like my family, like they kind of, like, I remember my mom saying, like, you're going to die. And, you know, like, I said, well, I guess, you know, there's like, you know, there's so many people who live in India that are vegetarian and they're perfectly fine, you know. I didn't believe that. So I kind of just embarked on my own journey with that. And I, you know, maybe I didn't eat the right things necessarily back then, like when I first started out, but I started like really embracing like some other cultural foods. Like, for example, I got exposed to like Indian food and like Chinese food and like Thai food, which is, if you look at the basics of those different kinds of foods, like they're basically like there can be like vegetarian because they have like they use nuts and like beans and seeds and things like that. So I really, but I definitely like I definitely was very much into that. Like, I've never backed away from it. I've never backed away from being vegetarian. Like, there was never a point where I was like, I'm going to go back and eat meat. So I was very committed to that, like, initially. And there was nothing that I came across ever where I felt like I was deprived or like I wasn't getting the right nutrition that I needed. And when I was in law school, I met this other person who said they were a vegan, and I thought, okay, all right. And she was telling me, like, well, you should become vegan too. If you really care about animals, you should be vegan. I'm like, well, oh my God, that sounds so extreme. Like, how would I do that? You know? And she's like, well, you know, the egg industry and the dairy industry are equally as bad as, you know, the meat industry, because there's so many things that are intertwined. Like, with dairy, you know, like in this country, that's where a lot of the veal products come from, is from like the dairy industry. There's like this, you know, subset of cows that are basically raised to be dairy cows, and the boy cows that are born they can't produce milk, so they just turn them into veal calves. And so, like, I thought, you know, yeah, that's only like a small part of the information I got. But then I was thinking, like, yeah, that's pretty bad in my mind. Like, I can't support that either. And so I started to really like question, like, how am I going to live my life if I was a vegan? Like, what would I have to do? And so you know, I definitely, like, I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And then, like, you know, there were times when I was like at a friend's house or something, and the only thing I could have would be like, you know, soup that had cream in it or something. And so, like, there were times when I was dealing with like this process of slowly trying to figure out how I could take the dairy out of my diet, because that was like the biggest thing. Yeah. And so, yeah, it took me like a year, but I was very committed to it, and it was hard. Like, I was, you know, like in this country, there's so many things with dairy or cheese or butter or something in them. So it was definitely, it's a learning process, right? It might not necessarily be like, hey, my willpower isn't good enough or something. It's just a matter of like, what can I eat that's a substitute for this that, you know, like won't make me look like I'm just eating a salad, you know? And so, like, over time, like in that year, like you kind of like figure out, you find your way. And now I can say, like, there's no way I would ever eat those things again. Like, I don't even think of them as food. And yeah, like over the last like 5 years or so, like in this country, there's so many more options. Like, the market has been flooded with like these like alternative foods, and there's almost no way around it now, right? Like, so when you go to the dairy or go to the store and look for like milk, right next to it is like almond milk or soy milk or and like I'm hoping they have that in Ireland too.
You know what? Funny enough, you say that, because Ireland's a little bit behind with that kind of thing, and
yeah,
it's only recently that well, I was talking to someone about this yesterday. Even the likes of variants and veg and stuff like that. Like, we haven't seen some of like peanut butter wasn't a thing here 5 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, and we'd always listen to the American TV and like, what's that? And like we recently our newest thing is what do you call them? The avocados. It's only like 2 years here, and everyone's loving it. Like, and but like that as well. That's what I found when I was saying I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a plant-based, like a vegan. Right. And I went to Aldi's right beside us. So I went there. And there's very little on the shelf, and I had to go to Tesco or another store, and I got a few more bits there, and I had to kind of say, well, what am I going to put together? And then I read a lot about burritos and making that kind of thing, and lentils, and I was trying to make sure I stayed away from meat substitutes as well, so that it could be fruit and veg, and then like the likes of beans and all, which are also plant based. So that's what I just stuck on that, Right. So like that was tough because like that, I had to really, even in like this, like a Tesco, I really had to go looking to find what was vegan, and because I think the majority, like Ireland's such a farming country as well, and they're prided for their dairy, and it's a certain colour because of the rain and all this kind of thing, and I think it was raised on it, so it's like, but my mother was up yesterday, and she was visiting, and I made her, like a coffee, you make in the machine, you fill up the milk and you put it in I had the almond milk, and I tried, and it was the first time I had, usually just having black coffee for the last while. That was partly to do with the fasting as well, so I wasn't breaking the fast, but the almond milk was lovely then. It's like, wow, that's like a hint of vanilla off that, as connoisseur then of it, But I do think that that's a little bit of a struggle. But I think we're starting to change this model, because recently there's a few billboards around, and I've noticed this in the last few weeks, that recent, and they're really pushing the vegan diets, and I think it's about to blow up a lot more. And I think there's going to be, talking to a guy from France the other day, and he was saying that France are a little bit behind as well, but I think they're a little bit ahead of Ireland and the UK. And I think America is ahead of us again, to have the Whole Foods shops and all this kind of thing. So I think it is getting there, with alternatives and and like who's going to deny that eating more fruit and veg is going to be bad for you? Like that's, we're always told that, But it's hard as well to argue with the moral standpoint, because there's no arguing with that. I don't think like a lot of people know it's there and it pushes to the back of their mind.
Right.
And, people don't think about it then for a while. Then now and again you see this horrific video that circulates and just reminds you of what's going on there, And I think people don't want to look at it, I think it's a similar thing to almost faith in a way, that like, you don't want to look for it or dig into it too much, because you're going to have to change if you do it a little bit too much, And I think that's why it is tough.
Exactly. Like, I was kind of like that too. I kind of like, well, do I want to see this? But I said, like, if this is what's happening, like, I have to see it, because how can you, like, for me, like, I just feel like, I don't know, I feel like in some ways, like, I'm kind of a person that if I see something like that's not good or it's not happening the right way, I'm kind of somebody that takes action on that.
Yeah.
And so, like, to me, like, I feel like this is a way, like, every day for 3 times a day, or however many meals you have, you can say, I don't support animal cruelty, because people are like, oh, I don't like animal cruelty, like, oh, that's such a shame this dog was treated that way, but what about all these cows and pigs and chickens, like, every day it's just, like, to me,
it's an idea as well that what you believe, you have to act out what you believe in a lot of ways. It's one thing saying something, because it is a belief system as well, that line of way of going, and, if that's why I think the train thought and the truth part is the big thing, because there's no point in hiding the likes of what's going on, really. You have to just, you have to be presented with these things, and you have to make it, an educated decision, like, what are you going to do?
Right.
I think it's interesting that it does come down to morals, as well as, like, a lot of people say, I haven't yet felt a boost in energy from it yet, but I'm only doing it a couple of weeks, and I was told that it might take a little bit longer for that. But I already am finding a boost in energy in my fast, and so maybe because I'm doing them both at the same time, it's hard to determine what's giving me that boost.
Right.
But I do find that, like we were saying with the lack of selection here. I'm finding it tough to know what like the last 2 weeks on the Saturday I've gone out to do the run and I felt less fueled, and I'm kind of thinking, well, what did I eat last night? Well, I kind of had a few beans, and I don't know, like maybe that's why I wanted to ask you as a pro athlete, what is a good, what do you find like is a good vegan snacks for while you're on the cycle, and also what would you have beforehand? Can you run through some of the stuff that that you do as an athlete?
Yeah, sure. So so I can definitely say for myself, like I'm a more carb based athlete. Like there's a lot of people who are like, they say, oh, carbs are a bad thing, but like for me and like for my body, like I have to have carbs because it's like it's the energy for your workout, right?
Yeah.
And it's like it's also a big part of like how your brain works and things like that. I mean, that's not to say that you should like cut out all fats, but like I can definitely say like majority of what I eat is like a carb based food, and especially when I'm training hard and long hours, like my diet almost goes like so much more towards the carbs than other things, just to keep myself fueled. And I do have like I can say like I eat a lot of carbs, and like I don't gain weight like when I'm training. Like I typically, even if I eat a lot of protein, like I typically don't build a lot of muscle either. Like my physiology is such that like I'm not like, there's no way I'm ever going to be like a big gigantic bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So so I keep tabs, like pretty good tabs on like my energy levels, like day to day, and it depends on what I'm doing at the same time. But so like breakfast, I usually have like like a lot of grains. Like I'll have like granola with like soy milk, or something really starchy, like it doesn't have to be starchy, but like typically something that has like more carbs in it than like some people like, like, oh, I have fruit for the morning. Well, fruit is good, but it's like, it's not going to give you that energy you need, like for like whatever, if you're at work, like, you can burn through like fruit calories pretty quickly. So like having a smoothie is great, but have something else with protein in it too. So like for me, like, I'll have like granola has protein in it, and like I'll put like soy milk and things, and like that has protein in it, like more than what maybe almond milk has too. But like, yeah, like, so you want to get yourself started off with like a good breakfast. And a lot of people I find don't even eat breakfast, which is beyond like reason with me. Like, like I always eat breakfast, like no matter what. And like usually it's like pretty carb heavy, but I make sure like there's like certain amounts of protein in it as well. And like, so like, and I'm also like a big like nut person too. So if something, like they have in the morning might have nuts in it too, like that's even better. Cause it's giving you like some omega fats and things like that. So then like after my workout, if I do a workout in the morning, I'll typically have like, if it's a hard workout, like something that I've spent like, an hour and a half doing, depending upon like the intensity, I will definitely have like some kind of recovery, usually like nutrient kind of based. So then that's when I'll have like a smoothie with like maybe some like protein powder in it. And, there's so many different kinds now, but like the one that I use typically is the Vega one. And I don't know if they have that in Ireland, but it's basically like just, it's all plants, and it's it comes in a powder, and you can add it to like, as varying quantities to like whatever smoothie you make. So then I'll have like just a fruit smoothie with some of that in it, and that gives you like a little bit of calories and protein, like to if you've really worked yourself pretty hard, to like help you recover. And I typically do like 2 workouts or 3 workouts a day, so it sets you up for your next workout. Okay. So then like in between I might have like lunch, which might be like I don't go crazy with lunch, but like I'll have like a sandwich, like whole wheat bread with like sometimes I'll have like hummus with like some like hemp seeds in there, tomato, lettuce. But like sometimes I make something big on the weekend, or like I'm really a big fan of like barley and quinoa, or like some kind of grain that has like a big protein content in it, and then like I'll mix beans with it and like vegetables, and like you can make a big pot of that and have it for like lunches during the week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't go crazy with the cooking. Like I kind of know, like over time you kind of figure out what fuels you best. And like I do, like I know you were saying you're trying to stay away from like the imitation or like, you know, meat substitute products, and like that's a good thing to do too, because a lot of those products are more processed. You know, like they've been like, the food has been like somewhat like broken down, and you know, the nutrients added to it or taken away or something. So like, but in a pinch, if you're really hungry, or if you're trying to adopt like a plant-based diet, and hey, you know, you really want to have like a sausage or something, then that substitute product would be like great for that purpose, right? So I don't tell people, hey, don't eat those. Like, if you like it and you know you feel like you're getting like protein from it, like, you know, that's perfectly fine in my book.
What would you say to people's argument that you're not getting your vitamins in certain, like I've heard someone rang me and said, are you doing that vegan diet? I said, yeah. And they said, what about B12 and what about your iron levels and all that? And I said, well, I don't know, you know. So what would you say? Like, obviously you're continuing doing your workouts, so it hasn't, obviously you're not obviously deficient in anything. So what would your answer?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So like, you know what the thing is like, if you, and I've had some experience with like low iron in the past, like I can tell you what I've done for that. So like even people who eat like, you know, an omnivorous diet, like if they eat everything, you actually can be deficient in certain things. And one of the things I think that people forget is like you could be vitamin D deficient if you're not getting enough like sunlight, or your food that you eat isn't providing you those nutrients. So what I tell everybody is, if you're really concerned about it, go to your doctor and get like a panel, like a vitamin panel done, and you can see like what things that you have, like even before, if you want to go plant-based, like you can see what your vitamins are to begin with, so that when you start going plant-based, like you can go later on and get the same thing done and see what your deficiencies are. So I know like even when I was like an omnivore, like when I was younger, I had low iron. That could be from anything, you know, the way your body absorbs iron, to, hey, you know, maybe I wasn't eating enough foods with iron in them. And so what I did at that time was I supplemented my diet with these like iron tablets or something. And I didn't really see that did anything to me in terms of like my energy levels. But as I was training, maybe like 5 years ago, and I was training for Ironman, like I kind of had the same, I went to my doctor, I had the same like blood test done, and I found like I had a slightly low iron. It wasn't like I was anemic, but for an athlete, it should be higher. So then I started, like I went to my health food store and I took like these, this like liquid iron. It's something that's available now that's like, it's supposed to be easily absorbed. So I did that for some time, and I felt like maybe that helped a little bit. You know, for women, it's better to have like your iron levels be consistent, because, you know, if you're menstruating, then you're losing some iron like through that.
Or different people on top of it, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that like, especially iron levels are so individual, like from person to person, because I know somebody else who does what I do, and she constantly has to she's constantly battling low iron. So I think it's like, you know, a matter of like what your body's absorbing and how your body's using it, and, you know, what you're eating at the same time. So I think like for anybody, they should just figure out what their baselines are as an individual at their current diet, whatever they're eating, and then maybe like make some changes based upon that. So like for me, I do know that like for a vegan person, like the only vitamin that I hear that you cannot get from any of the plants and like vegetables or any vegan food is vitamin B12, because like in the wild, like, or a long time ago, like in the, you know, Neolithic era or wherever, like the food that people would eat, like the things that would grow on the ground, that you would eat them, and they had like this bacteria on them that like would produce the B12. So So like now, like because all of our food is grown
back then.
Yeah, like, it was all like in the wild and it wasn't in a crop. Like, now the crops are all contained and everything. Like, you're probably not getting B12 if you're a vegan. So that's the only one I've heard nutritionists say, like, you might want to consider supplementing B12. But if you eat like nuts and seeds and, lentils, or not lentils, but beans and rice and like, peanut butter, different things, as long as you're getting a wide variety of foods, if you're a vegan, like you can get all the nutrients that you can, that you would typically need.
That's great. At least, along with that, now I have a good few ideas for my next fueling up my next run. Anyway, but I wanted to ask you about this because this is something I've been doing and it's been working for me. I have been doing the intermittent fasting, and that's been doing it the last few months. And I was considering it. Again, I come across a talk on YouTube, wondering if it's any good, hearing a few different athletes and doctors talk about it. And I know you can often get doctors who disagree, and they can be very political. Yeah, but I said that I might try it. Like, just why not,
Yeah.
And then my friend who's in the army came over, and he's a kickboxer as well, and he's going to go to this gig, and I was going with him, and he says, "Funny you're talking about that. I'm about to try that as well," and I have the app downloaded. So straight away, I had been doing a run that day, and this was shortly after I had hurt my shoulder, and my energy levels were down. I think my body was trying to heal that shoulder, and everything was happening, and my fitness was gone. I went out to do a 3K run. I couldn't even complete that. And I started the fasting then on the Sunday night. And I just felt really good straight away. Like hungry the first morning or the first 2 mornings. And because what I was doing was I was doing 18-6. So it was 18 hours fasting, 6 hours eating. And I heard that like that thousands of years ago, this is how people lived. And that's what they call the caveman diet. And your body has much more time to rest and all this kind of thing. And a lot of stuff was making sense, so I said I'd try it and see from an unbiased point of view. Really, really worked on me. And I have a scale that has your body fat percentage and your muscle mass, and I was really wanted to see what would happen there. And my muscle mass stayed high, even though I wasn't working out as much in the gym, and my body fat was dropping. And my runs, it's like I had way more energy. And I was asking people why, and they said, well, look, after 12 hours, I was going for runs like 15 and 16 hours in. They're saying you burn from your fat stores, which is the most concentrated form of energy. So that made sense to me, So then I was trying to see, what's your experience with intermittent fasting? Or have you ever come across athletes who do it?
So I don't have as much experience on that. I do know, so I've actually never tried that myself. But like, I do know I have a friend who's a vegan athlete, and he does that on occasion, I think with some good success.
Yeah.
And then I know a couple other people who do it more as like a cleanse kind of a thing, where they feel like they're getting rid of toxins in their body. And those people might not be athletes. They might be more, people who just want to try to cleanse their body. Yeah. They feel like maybe they're building up toxins in some way. Yeah. That's a really interesting area, though. It's something that I've kind of considered, but because I know that like my energy levels for what I do training wise are so based upon like how much food that I've eaten, and like I can tell like I get if I don't at some points in my exercise regimen, if I don't like fuel myself well, I can definitely tell like I'm just running on fumes or
that's the thing, because it goes against what you're taught. Like because when I was doing the cycling, I was eating a lot of carbs the night before, and it goes in the water and pasta and everything I could, I haven't cycled as much with it, so I haven't actually tested that. I've only done it since the start of September, say, but my running has come on leaps and bounds.
Okay.
Well, someone I spoke to recently said they haven't tried it with exercise, but they tried it once or twice with cycling. They said it was tougher. And maybe that's because I know cycling, you bring little snacks to keep the carbs high, to keep your energy there.
Yeah.
I'd like to test if I have the same results with doing that. And maybe that's why I struggled a bit with the vegan diet at the start, because with the fasting and the dramatic change in the diet, I kind of got lost a little bit, and that's where I'm at now, a little bit trying to figure out. Now, I did a big shop yesterday, and I got a lot more stuff, so I'm hoping this week's going to be good. But I didn't want to stop doing it because I started that as an experiment, and I just kept doing it because it felt great, and I've over 70 intermittent fast done now, and my friends are saying we're just going to keep doing it, you know.
Yeah.
So I wanted to keep that while doing the vegan diet, plant-based diet, and to see, you know, if I was going up and up, and I haven't felt any worse. That's a fact. My training has increased in intensity, so I'm a bit tired today, you know.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I'm still trying to chalk down where I'm getting the energy from and where this, that, and the other comes from.
Yeah.
And funny we were talking about, that's one side of it. The energy levels are one side of it, you know. And the other side as well, like you're saying from the moral standpoint, I had this form kind of takes this podcast takes the form of kind of the training, the mental aspect, and the spiritual side. I had a discussion with my brother on episode 12, and he wanted to come and give an atheist standpoint on things and kind of challenge my views that I had, you know. And like I always say that I appreciate life a lot more, especially in the last few years when I got more in touch with my kind of Christian side of my own values and just appreciating life. And even though, you know, like having the love for my kids or just trying to love Mondays and enjoy being alive while I can, you know, and enjoy running and having a physically fit body and all that. But, you know, when you're saying the moral standpoint of the vegan side of things, you know, it is hard to deny that. And also, I asked the question, you know, as an atheist, where do you get your morals from? You know, because I think a standpoint of morals is kind of a higher power in that way. And obviously you have a strong moral principle with your vegan side of stuff. So where would you place yourself? Would you say that you believe in a higher power as well? Or where do you think your morals on that kind of originate?
Yeah, so that's a good question because, like, I was raised Roman Catholic. My mom, her family was came from a Catholic family, and I guess at some point it's not like I didn't believe in some of the things that they thought, like how people should treat other people and things. I guess to me, like, I found the outside world and nature to be a little bit more spiritual for me, like things that you find in nature and like how and why that is, right? So, like, to me, like, I do think that there is something bigger than what we can describe, like, as a human, you know, as humans, we can't understand or describe what it is specifically. Yeah. Maybe that is God, right? Mm. And like, that's okay. I don't have any problem with people, you know, like what they believe is, you know, their own thing, I guess. But like, to me, like, it's really important to, for me, like, as humans, like, we're kind of caretakers of the world. And I feel like the really awesome and interesting things in the world, like, really should be protected in some way. And like, to me, like, if they are like gifts from God, then like they're gifts and we should like treasure them and, you know, protect them. And like, you know, so, and like, we're not the only inhabitants of this planet. You know, there's thousands and thousands of different species of animals. There's like, you know, trees, and like, you know, nature is just incredible. And so like, for me, like, I'm also a really big like environmentalist, and I see that also wrapped up in like, you know, like the vegan part of how I live my life too, because being vegan, you're automatically like using like less resources. But going back to like the whole like spirituality thing of it. So like, I think for me, I'm more like spiritual rather than religious, but like, I think like, you know, that you shouldn't like to me, like, I do think that like sometimes people think that vegans, like, all they care about is like animals, but like, I also have like I also care about humanity, and like, you know, things that happen around the world are all equally as, you know, some of the bad things are equally as bad as how animals are treated, you know, and I don't think like people should be treated bad either, you know. It's kind of
just follow one ideology kind of thing. It's all the whole landscape of things.
Right. So yeah, I think like, yeah, that's interesting. Like, I don't know. I guess I just think like, in some ways that we should really be careful, especially now, we should really be careful with our natural world, because as the human population expands, like what's going to happen is, you know, the earth won't be big enough for like to support all the life, right? And if we keep taking and taking and taking, like the next generations aren't going to have nearly what the kind of diversity and like beautiful things to treasure with the earth. So like, I don't know, I'm very like, I don't I don't know if there's anything for that in religion necessarily. Like, you know, maybe the Bible talks about that a little bit, but
yeah, it's tricky. Like, I know in the last few years I had to come back to well, I had a bit of an experience which made me question everything, but I really had to realize that there was a separation between the church and the religious side of things and what the message was. I had to actually go back to, you know, I asked my nana, you know, and she's passed since, but you know, could I get a Bible and could she show me what it was and point me to a good one that was, you know, and I realized a lot of stuff that was said in that, you know, it was different than what like Ireland is Catholic, true and true.
Yes.
You know? That's why I'd say I'm a Christian, not a Catholic, because when I went to the source, I really got the morals and the ethic, and I believe that even, you know, where Jesus was saying, you know, you don't have to go to mass, and but they don't, you know, a lot of stuff is held out. So when I dug into, then I wanted to know the evidence of this. I wanted to know where this come from, how realistic it is, and really my whole belief system built from a Christian side of things, which is very similar along the lines of, you know, looking after other people and looking after yourself, and he adds the extra thing of even not holding a grudge on your enemy as well, and then kind of them frontiers. And I think that as well, the vegan thing as well, I think, you know, like you're saying, you know, we do have to look after ourselves as a human race, but also the animals and the plants and the life, like you said, you know, because if we don't, you know, we're doing it at the moment where we're destroying a lot of stuff, you know, and it's great. I do often see, you know, I think it's great where see these new technologies for cleaning the sea, and they're coming up with great ideas, and at least there are people out there that are putting that into good use, and it's great to see as well, you know. And
yeah,
it's nice hearing that standpoint from like you obviously that's what I'm going back to, saying that you kind of act out what you believe, and you know, it's when you do follow a diet like that, in a way, no, I don't know if I can, you know, I'm still in early days of it and all that, but it's great that, you know, to see people doing it for them good reasons, you know, positive reasons as well, you know. It's tough in the beginning, but I think as well, also it makes me appreciate life as well, you know, where I can come back from a run, it could be like tough, you know, sweating and all that, but I appreciate what's around me an awful lot more, you know, the nature, and that's helped me. Like that's why I find it's different from the religion, where it's the spiritual side of things as well, where you kind of get more in tune. You see everything in a different light almost. You know, I often go on my bike and get off the bike and say, "Wow, like, you know, look, it's amazing. Like there's the sunset, and that's the animals. You know, stuff that you don't." I think fitness and training and exercise helps you with that, because it gets you out there into the outdoor world, because we're so contained in the indoor world now. And I often say, from work to the car to the room to the house, you rarely get out and even look at the moon anymore, you know.
I know.
Or evenings, where if you get the exercise going, I think that's why it connects with the spiritual side there, you know, because I think it's, you know, it's uplifting, and it brings you up. You can see people beaming. They don't just lose weight, they glow, and you can see the freshness in them. And obviously that ties into releasing the chemicals in your brain. It gives you great mental health, and it's all. That's why I think the tree. Like I was obviously, my mantra used to be physically and mentally ready for the world, but I did definitely add in the spiritual side of it, because I think, you know, it's definitely a health thing. You see it when, you know, you put on your favorite music for exercise even, and, you know, you have a reaction, and it's where is that reaction coming from? You know, your spirit is being lifted. They reckon you can run, like, I think it's like 17% further with music, you know, that gets you going, you know. So I definitely think there's substance there in that side of it, and I think it's worth incorporating to get the three things health. And obviously diet, like we're talking about today, is key, you know, for for three of them aspects, but especially we're talking about you as a pro athlete on the training side of things, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's great tying it in. And also I wanted to ask you about, you know, it's probably a 2-part question, it could be 3-part. You know, when you do running, especially when you start out, or I'm just going to take running as an example.
Yeah.
You know, the physical side of it you see is the weight fall off, or your cardiovascular health getting better, and then a mental side of things, and you're out, you're getting the fresh air. You know, obviously your confidence is getting higher if then you're having them results. As a triathlete, you know, that's, you know, running is one thing, and then lifting weights is another thing, and then doing different sports. You know, how do you see the physical and mental benefits? Can you kind of see in you, you know, what benefits you're pulling out of them as opposed to if you aren't doing it or someone who's not doing it?
Yeah, I think I think like, again, like you were saying, it's just good for somebody to, like, just even any kind of activity, right? It kind of changes your mental state for just maybe, you know, 15 or 20 minutes. It like gets your body doing something sort of different, and now you have like a different perspective on something, or maybe you're thinking about something a different way. So that's one thing. It changes your brain, like kind of rewires your brain just a little bit differently. And I think like that can be beneficial for anybody, right? And like that's kind of, I think, why originally when I started getting into shape, like when I was in college, like I really started enjoying going on these like long runs, because I could have time to myself just to think about things maybe in a different way, and you're kind of doing something at the same time. So like your brain patterns are slightly different than when if you're just sitting at a desk, you know. Yeah. So that's one thing, I think. And then, you know, yeah, I think like for me, like it was like what I was doing also gave me like a lot of confidence. So, you know, whether it was what I was doing at work, or, you know, with my friends or something, or my family, like, you know, I definitely got a lot more confidence in myself. And maybe it's just because like over time when you're training and you're getting ready for a goal race or something, maybe it's just the empowerment of like knowing that you got through the training and you did what you're supposed to do, and you maybe you made your goal, or you at least tried, and like now you have a better feeling about yourself that, hey, you know what, if I did put time and energy into something, then I can accomplish it. So like I think that there's that like side of it where, you know, some people might think they're, you know, even older people, like they think, oh, I could never do that. Well, you don't know until you try, right? And if you have a goal, like, you know, especially if it's like a physical one, like, you know, like it really helps motivate you to like get on that path doing something. And then, you know, a lot of times you're going to be successful. So like that definitely gives you a lot more confidence in whatever you're doing, whether maybe it's some kind of thing at work, you know, even if it's not athletic, then, you know, like, hey, if I prepare well for this, then I can do this, you know. And yeah, I think it stems into a lot of different areas. And like, not only that, for yourself, it's like other people see you doing this and they might be inspired themselves to try something, right?
Yeah, very true, yeah.
And I've had differing reactions about that, because people that I work with, like, you know, some of them got inspired, but then some of them were like, it didn't change them at all, you know. So I think it depends, but at the same time, like, you know, you never know who you're going to inspire, you know.
Right. Yeah, it is true, you know, and you know, your actions kind of go a lot further than you think. I think sometimes, you know, even, you know, you might be a friend of a friend who you know, heard about you doing something, and it's not like a big-headed thing, but like everyone, like, it's very encouraging to you know. I would always love to, you know, even if people are doing like a 1 kilometer jog rather than sitting on the couch, I think it's amazing. That's getting out there, and like you said, it does help in terms of, it's very true what you're saying. When you're getting out and you're alone with your thoughts as well, and you kind of put things in perspective a lot better, and you carry that over to like your workplace, like you're saying, you know, you can build on preparing for things, same structure you did, the way you prepared for that race or whatever. And I think it is very, it does help an awful lot. I think I was talking about the idea of lifting weights. I got a weightlifter guy on. It was actually the guy I was talking about earlier, who was always that bit ahead of me. And he was in the gym first. And so his name is Jimmy, actually, which is quite ironic. But what we said is that like the idea there, the psychology is you're kind of developing yourself, and it's not just a physical thing, but you're incorporating into your working out as well, or else your working out is incorporated into your work, as well. I think that it's, especially what I love about the trail running is you're around nature a lot more.
Yeah.
You don't need, like, I'd often take the earphones just going around here in the concrete, but I don't do that for the trail runs. And
right.
You can appreciate it, and then you can sort out a lot of stuff. And even for the likes of the podcast, I might come up with, I'm going to get that person on, or I'm going to do this. And, you get that time that you don't get when you're working or you're at home being distracted by the TV or by the phone, where you don't get to think these things through. The exercise, I think it's hugely understated, but it helps an awful lot that way, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be trained. You don't even have to be training for anything. You could just go for a hike or something, like, and I think like, for me, especially, like, I find, even time just away from, like screens and things like that, you're just like, maybe listening to the wind or the birds, or like, to me, that's really like recharging for me. And I have like a much deeper appreciation for, things that I have in my life that make life comfortable. Like, even if you're doing like a long run or something, you're like, wow, this is so hard. And when you're done with it, you're like, gosh, it's really nice just to sit down, right?
Yeah.
And you just develop like appreciations for things that maybe you wouldn't even have noticed before. Yeah. So I think that's another like really cool perspective. And like if this becomes like more of a lifestyle, like you can have a lot of like health benefits from exercise. I mean, there's countless things that like are so much better.
The basic longevity of life.
Yeah.
Obviously, your organs are being not being pushed, but they're being used to. They're being exercised and all. But it is a great motivation. You don't have to go far to look up benefits or reasons to get out there,
Right.
Like I often say, we're supposed to do 30 minutes. They recommend at least 30 minutes every day. And that's at least.
Yeah.
I know some people who do, like, they might do a yoga class once a week,
Right.
And I'm not putting them down because fair play to them from getting out and doing it. But, we tend to forget and we put exercise in the back burner like it's a secondary thing, or, but really it should be. My friend's a boxer, and he says, it should become before work. You know what I mean? You should make sure you get that done, because we're so terrified of missing work schedules or missing this, that, or the other. But really, your health is your wealth, like they say. And I know that's an old kind of cheap thing, but like,
that's so true, though. It's so true. Most people don't think about it, and in our country, like, there's so much money that's spent on healthcare and like, medicine, and like you could spend so much money on drugs and therapies and stuff. But if you just went out and like exercised, like you said, 30 minutes a day, it doesn't take that much. It doesn't. Like you could like not have a lot of problems, like.
Yeah, and it's true, and we're very kind of cautious about the exercise industry as well. And like I went to my mother said to me the other day, I want to get into jogging or walking, and I said, yeah. And she goes, will you come to the shop with me and you can pick out runners that you think would be good or that. And I thought it was great. And but when we're looking at the price point of the runners and all that, and they weren't that expensive, but it's funny, and even I can do it sometimes when we're going out to get training tops or something like that. You kind of standoffish a bit, like, oh, should I get them or should I not? But that night you might go and spend that same money on a takeaway and not think twice about it,
Exactly.
A night out, people would often, just throw money at it. And that, like, once every few months, if you need a new top or a new pair of runners, we're so, should I be doing that? We're kind of justifying our heads. But, like, really, I'm not saying you have to go out and get the best of everything, but just to get the basic kit that will really help you and, push you forward. Like, I had terrible problems with my shin splints initially, and I wanted to get runners that were more cushioned. And when I was kind of like, will I justify them or not? I think they were Adidas Boost, what they were called, and they're a lot less impactful. And she's the best purchase ever made. Now I'm flat out running in them, and like I haven't had shin problems. Now I did go to a physio as well to help it along, but they definitely helped a huge amount.
Yeah.
But we really should prioritise it more and not just the physical side, but the diet side as well. And that's kind of why I thought it'd be very important to talk to you as well, because I know as someone who's doing it 10 years, you'd have a lot of experience with that diet side on the vegan side of things as well.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah. So, like, I'm probably like 11 and a half years into this, being vegan. And so, like, to me, like I said, like to me, this is like, I look at other foods that aren't vegan, and it's like almost like they're not even food. Like, it's not, it's like, you're looking at a pile of rocks or something. It's kind of like at this point where it's so ingrained, and I kind of know at this point, like, where I can get most things. It's the hard part is when you're like, for me, is like when you're traveling, like, say you've gone to a different city or something, and generally, like, now with, like, smartphones and stuff, it's very easy to find, like, places where you can eat as a vegan. But if you go to, like, a really small town, or I also like to travel, different parts of the world too. So, like, but that's like kind of the fun of it to me, is like figuring out where I can get things, because, like, almost everywhere you can find something. I mean, there's a couple places I've been where it's been like absolutely the worst for food, and like you end up eating like maybe things that aren't like necessarily the most healthiest, but like or you end up eating like a ton of something that that's vegan, that you don't want to eat like a ton of, or whatever. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, there's a big part about it just to be prepared. Like if you're going to go to somebody's house where that they're probably not going to have vegan food, well, then you could bring something that maybe like you've made that's vegan, that like to share, and maybe they'll like it too. So
Sure. And you probably do find that you find it's like a stigma almost as well as some people, isn't it? Like I'm only a few weeks into it, people are kind of like, and there's some people that don't even tell, it's kind of like they wouldn't get it. I don't know if they get it or not, but it's they're set in their ways. Maybe older people are maybe like that, and that's probably the wrong way of thinking about it as well. But like I say, I'm sure you've come across a lot of people, when you said, "Oh no, I'm vegan, I'm going to eat this," or whatever, who are kind of looking at you with two heads, kind of almost.
Yeah, and then there are some foods where people are still like, "What is that?" or they don't know, but like, I think it's also a matter of like how open you are too in general, like. Are you open to like different ideas, or hey, like maybe I'll try something new for myself? Like there's a lot of people who just are very walled off from that. So to me, like, I'm kind of a person who, like, I don't necessarily like push my views on people, but if they ask me, I totally tell them, and I share the information I have. And some people are like very dismissive, and they sometimes they might not even believe what you're saying, and then we'll say, hey, like, watch this video, and then they'll say, oh, well, that only happens in one place, and I'm like, no, this is like an industry norm that this is happening. And so there are people who are very like they just want to, they're just so happy with the way things are, but for me, like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of who I am is like somebody that if I'm not happy with the way things are going, like, I'm very apt to like trying to make them for the better if it's not going well, or so I think it's like a mindset, right? Like to me, there's absolutely no reason why anybody would not be vegan. Like, that's how I think about it. But then, like, some people, like, they're just not exposed to it, and I don't know, I feel like, if they were exposed to it, then they should be vegan, right? Because there's just so many bad things about it, the way food is produced in this country, or at least this country. I don't know how people could still be eating the way they do, but of course there's like, a lot of people that do, despite having like health problems and, whatever else like that comes with it. I'm just going to turn the light on real quick because it's getting dark. Yeah.
Also, it's funny you said different countries, because I was talking to my father earlier on. I was telling him I was doing, trying out the vegan thing, and he was saying we're talking about different countries and different diets and how they did that. And I was trying to get down to the source of how we began to eat meat, and trying to trace it back along. And then you come to the likes of talking to the guy from France the other day, and then thinking about them eating insects and frogs and all. I was like, was that a gluttony thing, or what was going on there? And he was kind of saying, well, no, like, I think when the Germans kind of invaded them years ago, you know, they were eating whatever they could get their hands on almost. And it's funny tracing stuff back and seeing, you know, where people's diets come from, or, you know, what we should be eating or whatever. And even the words omnivore, and it's looking at, you know, omni I think means any or every, and vor means to eat, and it's from Latin, and it's kind of just, you know, where it was just eat whatever you can almost, you know, because insects and frogs, and surely they're not to be eaten, you know. Then in different countries they think, oh, it's fine, you know.
Right. I mean, you know, if you take a look at some of the things they eat in like China, I mean, in some places in China, it's acceptable to eat dogs, and like in this country, you know, if you kill a dog, that's animal cruelty. You could get thrown in jail for that. And it's mind-boggling to me that it's just basically a matter of like what species the animal is that affords them like basically no legal rights versus being like protected under the law.
Yeah, how do we draw the line? Is it culture based? Is it what, you know, in terms of that? But also, I also want to know, kind of, you know, you as an athlete now, after doing all your runs and Ironmans and everything like that, is there a goal now you're still setting for yourself, or are you just trying to keep going as long as you can?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I've been doing this so long now. So the reason why I became a professional was because I really wanted to see, like, you know, if I put like a lot more time into my training and racing, like how much faster, you know, I could be, or like, you know, it was more or less like kind of an experiment. I mean, obviously, you can do that as an amateur, but I also cut back on like some of my work time too. So I put more time into my training rather than work. And you know, I'm an older person too. So like, there might be like some physiological things, like for, you know, the age factors into like, you know, how I respond to the training. And it's been very hard. But like, so for me, like, to be racing as a pro, I just wanted to see if I put more time into my training, like how much faster I could get. Yeah. And, you know, I also wanted to like be an advocate for being a vegan athlete. Part of like my goal with being the pro is to like show people like, hey, you know what? I race as a professional athlete. I'm vegan, and I do like really tough endurance races, you know, and like this kind of to show people you can be healthy, fit, and strong.
Still do it.
Even if you don't eat animals, you know, like most people think you have to eat meat to, you know, run really fast or bike really fast, or, you know, there's definitely a misconception about that. And
it's a good ethic, you know, it's a good motivation for it as well, because I'm going to ask you what's your motivation, but that's a great one in itself.
Yeah, so I really wanted to like highlight the fact that I'm a vegan athlete and I compete as a professional, and I'm still getting faster, even I'm a slightly older like athlete at this point. And yeah, so that's been a goal of mine. And then yeah, I mean, like I have some races that I do that I have like time, you know, I set goals like time wise. Like if I run like a half marathon or something, I have like things that I try to do like time wise. I mean, of course, like it's hard to do a race where, you know, if the conditions are different for the race, or if it's, you know, hilly or flat, you know, to have time goals. But yeah, I have some time goals sometimes, like with different races I do, but mostly I just try to get better and, you know, try to, like this year especially, I've put a lot more time into just resting and fueling myself the right way. Just to support the fact that I want to like get faster in my racing, because my body, like being an older athlete, like it doesn't recover the same way like a younger person does. So
I think sports science probably helps an awful lot in the last few years as well, hasn't it, with fueling and resting, and, you know, there's a lot of research into the way we should properly look after ourselves and the benefits of it there in the last few years, especially. I think, you know, it's a great field that's opened up. Any advice for anyone who is looking to become a triathlete, like stuff that you wish you'd known getting going?
Yeah, I mean, most people, there are like certain people who start out and they try to just do everything all at once and they just burn themselves out, and like, you know, that's kind of a bad way to start out too, especially like also with running. Like some people think like, oh, I'm going to be a runner, and they're very motivated, so they go out and they maybe do too much all at once, and then they, you know, injure themselves or they just get burnt out from it. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot more information out there now about that. So
Yeah.
You know, I suggest, like, for me, like, having like the coach was really key for me, because you know, you're gonna like, for me, like, you have to push yourself hard sometimes, but then other times you have to back off, and so having that balance is really key, and having somebody else like look at your training plan and seeing what you're doing and saying, hey, you're doing too much of this, maybe you should do some more of this, or, you know, you're not doing enough of this. And yeah, so it's like, for me, like, the coach is like really important.
Yeah, and sometimes it's good to get a few different standpoints, isn't it? Where someone might push you in one direction, you get a balance then. And also, not to throw away what you're gaining yourself, because only you know how your body reacts. You know, we have that. You know, I know our anatomy is the same, but everyone reacts differently. They have different intolerances, they have different threshold levels. You know, different VO2, you know, gains. But you know, that's very interesting. But look, I really appreciate you coming on and having a chat with me about it today. And I hope to get this posted soon, as soon as, hopefully the next day or so. But really enjoyed the chat, and I really appreciate you coming on and telling your point of view on it. I really appreciate that, Jen.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. I'm curious about what you do now, and like, I hope, you know, your endeavors, like with the plant-based eating, like, continue, because it sounds like you're on the right path. And
yeah, well, I'm trying to figure it out, and I guess, you know, I had that opportunity this year of starting fresh, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to work out every bit of the aspects, you know, and from talking to people who know what they're talking about, basically, you know, and try and build a solid base from then, and then hopefully, you know, I'm not one for putting up a lot of photos of me in the gym or anything like that, because I think that, you know, they're trying to get what people can relate to on an individual kind of standpoint, and talking to different people so they can hear it and relate to it from their standpoint. That's really appreciate your input on it as well, and I appreciate you taking the phone call.
Yeah, you're welcome very much. And like, if anybody has a question or something that they want, after listening to this, they can post it onto my website, where there's like a comment section, or there's a page where you can like write an email to me, like right on the website. I'd be happy to get in touch with them and, you know, talk to them about whatever that comes to mind, you know, because
that's great. Well, I might post the link for that then in the talk, and then people can do it. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I have to go now and say goodnight to my son who's waiting on me. So thanks very much, Jen.
Yeah, really good talking to you.
Yeah, talk again soon. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.